With Ashanti, it is a delicate situation. She is a big part of Murder Inc. The fans want that. Everybody wants that. It's weird. Just how I have my version of what has happened with me and Ashanti, she has her version.
And I have my version.
We were still married, but we were separated when they were dating. I was used to it from the beginning, like him going and traveling. I just wasn't used to the women. That was like new, like, where did these hoes come from?
All right, y'all, let's talk about Irv Gotti, because this man just won't let Ashanti go. I mean, it's been decades, and yet anytime he gets in front of a mic, he somehow finds a way to bring her up. But while he was busy reminiscing about the past, his actual wife, Deb Lorenzo, was dealing with the real fallout of his so-called fling. And now she's finally breaking her silence. See, back in 2007, Gotti's Way gave us a real look into their messy marriage. We saw Deb trying to hold their family together while Irv was out here playing boss at Murder Inc. and running around with different women like it was his second job. But here's the thing, while Deb could tolerate a lot, it was Ashanti that really pushed their marriage over the edge. Irv wasn't just stepping out on his wife, he was obsessed. And let's be real, if Ashanti was just some random side piece, why is Irv still talking about her in interviews all these years later? Was it love, or was Irv just caught up in his own fantasy? Well, Deb's got plenty to say about that.
You
wanted people to forgive you when you do stuff?
Don't talk about the cheat. I'm a good chip off the old block, aside from the infidelity. In my crazy mind, I thought that was life. This is my wife, this is my family, but this bitch is here to suck my
I don't want to hear that. I literally don't want to throw up.
Now, to understand how messy this situation really was, we gotta go back to when Irv and Deb were still married. See, Irv and Deb tied the knot in 2003, and she already knew she was marrying a busy man. Running Murder Inc. meant late nights, constant travel, and being surrounded by artists. But what she didn't expect was the non-stop stream of women he brought into their marriage. Like he had an open-door policy on cheating. Deb wasn't blind, she knew Irv had a reputation, but she tried to hold their family together despite his antics. On Gotti's Way, she openly admitted that she put up with a lot, but there was one name that kept coming up over and over: Ashanti. And that is when everything changed. Irv was living a double life. On one side, he had Deb and their kids trying to play the role of a husband and father, but on the other hand, he was the studio Casanova, entertaining women like it was part of his job description. But when Ashanti entered the picture, that's when things went completely off the rails. Deb wasn't just dealing with another one of his flings. This was different. Irv wasn't just cheating, he was obsessed. He wasn't just sneaking around, he was making it obvious. There were public appearances, interviews where he couldn't help but gush about Ashanti, and industry insiders whispering about how deep he was in. And the worst part, he barely even tried to hide it. See, most men cheat and keep it moving, but Irv, nah. He made Ashanti his entire personality. When Ashanti joined Murder Inc., she became the label's biggest star, racking up hit after hit, and Irv was acting like her #1 fan. He wasn't just producing her career, he was all in. Industry folks started noticing how much extra attention he gave her, and let's be real, it wasn't just about business. The thing is, it's not unusual for a producer and an artist to work closely together, but Irv was different. He was constantly hyping Ashanti, talking about her talent, her looks, her everything. Meanwhile, Deb was sitting at home watching her husband act like a groupie for another woman. And let's not forget, Murder Inc. was in the middle of a federal investigation at the time. The label was fighting for its survival, but instead of focusing on his company and family, Irv was spending more time talking about Ashanti than handling business. Even in interviews years later, he still couldn't help himself. And here's where it gets really messy. Even after Ashanti moved on, Irv still wouldn't shut up about her. He was out here telling anyone who would listen about their situationship. He even went as far as talking about how he he found out she was dating Nelly, claiming he was heartbroken despite the fact that he was still married at the time. It got to the point where Ashanti had to start distancing herself because Irv just would not let it go. She kept quiet for the most part, but when she did speak on it, she made it clear whatever Irv thought they had, it wasn't what he was making it out to be. So, was this really just a fling, or was Irv living in full delusion? Well, Deb has a lot to say about that.
When you get tired of just when you just get tired of being tired, like, and really, no one can tell you when it's time to leave. Like, you just know you get tired of being tired, and that was me. I was just like, I can't do this. And
Deb tried to hold things together, not just for herself, but for their kids. See, when you're married to a man like Irv, a high-profile music mogul, there's already an understanding that the industry comes with temptations. But what she didn't sign up for was her husband making a fool out of her in public while pretending everything was fine at home. Irv had this habit of coming home on weekends, playing the part of a family man just enough to make Deb believe they could fix things. And she tried, she really did. But it's hard to fix a marriage when your husband is out here giving interviews about another woman like you don't exist. At one point, she even admitted that she wanted to believe things could go back to how they were before Ashanti entered the picture, but the reality? There was no going back. Irv was too deep in his own fantasy world, living out this rock star lifestyle while treating his wife like an afterthought. But the real breaking point, it wasn't just cheating, it wasn't just an obsession, it was when Irv started taking out his Ashanti frustrations on his own family. As things fell apart with Ashanti, Deb noticed that Irv became even more distant. He wasn't just juggling two lives anymore, he was spiraling. And instead of handling his problems like a grown man, he started projecting his anger and disappointments onto the people who had been loyal to him the whole time. Deb was over it. The late nights, the disrespect, the public humiliation, it was too much. And eventually she did what Irv never thought she would do. She left. And honestly, that should have been the end of it. But nope, because Irv still wasn't done talking. And y'all, if you thought Irv kept his Ashanti obsession private, nope. He made sure the whole world knew.
I struggle with my identity. Like, who am I going to be if I'm not his wife? Because that's what everyone knew me as, his wife. So I'm not Irv Gotti's wife. I'm just Debbie. Am I okay with that? I wasn't okay with that. So I struggled a long time. I went back and forth like I'm not enough just being Debbie. Like, I don't have that title, and people are not going to associate me. I'm not going to mean anything anymore.
Most people move on after a breakup, especially one that happened decades ago. But Irv lived in the past. He did countless interviews, podcasts, and documentaries where he brought up Ashanti like it was yesterday. At one point, it was so bad that people started roasting him for it. Like, bro, she left you. It's done. But no, Irv insisted on keeping the conversation going. One of the wildest moments? His Drink Champs interview. This man sat there years later talking about how he was heartbroken when he found out Ashanti was dating Nelly. Keep in mind, this wasn't just some casual mention. He went into full detail, acting like the victim as if he wasn't a whole married man at the time. And let's not forget, he kept painting himself as the genius behind her career, like she wouldn't have been successful without him. He made all these wild claims about their time together, acting like he made her. But let's be real, Ashanti had the talent, Irv was just the one who benefited from it. Meanwhile, Ashanti never even acknowledged him. She stayed quiet, kept her head high, and focused on her own career. She refused to give Irv the reaction he was so desperate for. At the end of the day, Irv thought he could rewrite history, but the only thing he really did, proved to everyone that he never got over Ashanti and that his biggest L wasn't losing her. It was never realizing he never had her in the first place.
When you've been with someone who's taking care of you, and your whole identity is in them, and so now you're going off on your own. So many people don't do that. You get so caught up in, and I've had people tell me, oh, just stay. Like, why don't you just stay? Like, let him do his thing, you do your thing, and I'm like, no, like, I just couldn't. I can't. I can't live this double life. I just can't do it. And I was like, it's not for me.
After years of putting up with Irv's disrespect, the humiliation, and the constant side chick drama, Deb finally chose herself. She packed her bags, walked away, and never looked back. And honestly, it was long overdue. Deb admitted that fear kept her in the marriage longer than she should have stayed. She was afraid of what life would look like without Irv, afraid of breaking up her family, afraid of starting over after years of standing in her husband's shadow. But once she stepped away, she saw the truth. She was never Irv's priority. See, Irv wanted it all. He wanted to play family man on the weekends while running around with Ashanti during the week. He wanted Deb to sit at home and wait for him, to be the loyal wife who overlooked his disrespect and stayed quiet while he paraded his obsession in front of the world. But Deb wasn't doing that anymore. She realized that her peace, her dignity, and her self-worth mattered more than holding on to a marriage where she was nothing more than a background character in her own life. And here's the kicker. While Deb was finally moving forward, Irv, he was still moving backwards. Even after the divorce, after Ashanti completely distanced herself, and after years of proving he had nothing left to say that anyone wanted to hear, he still couldn't keep Ashanti's name out of his mouth. It was almost pathetic at this point. Everyone had moved on. Deb was living her best life, Ashanti was thriving, but Irv, he was still sitting in interviews talking about how he lost the love of his life. But let's be real, he never had Ashanti to begin with. And trust me, the internet had a field day with this one. Fans wasted no time dragging Irv for being more emotional over Ashanti than over losing his own family. A person wrote, Irv Gotti is the definition of stuck in the past. Ashanti been moved on, but he's still out here acting like she broke his heart yesterday. Another one added, imagine embarrassing your wife, losing your family, and still not being the man Ashanti wanted. L after L. Like, imagine your ex-wife walking away from your marriage and choosing peace, and the only thing you're worried about is how you lost a woman who was never really yours. People started pointing out the obvious. Ashanti never acknowledged Irv in the way he wanted. She never spoke about their supposed relationship, never entertained his stories, and never gave him the reaction he was desperate for. Meanwhile, Irv was out here reliving the past like it was a Netflix series he just couldn't stop rewatching. But what do y'all think? Was Irv truly in love, or was he just obsessed with a fantasy? Let me know in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe because we'll be keeping y'all updated on all the latest tea.